Warning, this episode contains foul language, discussion of wild animal attacks, brief mention of cannibalism, and a whole lot of Weird Al.
Hi, weirdos. You are listening to Keep It Weird, the podcast for all things strange, unusual, risky, cheesy, dark, animalistic, wild, feral, and everything in between. Each week we sit down with each other from across the country or with a very special guest, and we talk about something weird. And this week is going to get super weird, staying on brand. But it's also going to feel very different. This is the very first time in Keep It Weird history that I, Lauren Ogle, have hosted by myself and released an episode without our dearest host with the most, Ashley. Our producer and expert on all things weird is not here with us for tonight's episode because our girl has been busy. She is producing and working hard on this show that we know and love, but is also showing up for her new venture on Losers Club podcast, which you should all be listening to. If you're not, what are you even doing? And she's been hosting some film festivals in Chicago, super casual NBD. She's got it going on. So all that is to say, hello! You are here with me, and we are about to give you a very, very special episode with some of our absolute favorite people in the world as our co-hosts for tonight. They are from our absolute favorite podcast, Movies That Made Us Gay. It's a big old collaboration episode as we dive into film history, just the way they do on their own fabulous show. But for us, it only feels appropriate to dissect the movies that made us weird. The movies that made us weird. What films from our childhood or even just a few years ago feel like a straight up fever dream? What content made us the weirdos we are today? Boy, oh boy. We have a lot to talk about. This is going to be a bizarre and marvelous episode. My name is Lauren, and tonight I would love your help in welcoming from Movies That Made Us Gay our dear friends and weirdos, Pete and Scott.
Hello.
Hi, weirdos.
Hi, weirdos.
Hello.
What's going on, you guys?
Hey.
Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Lauren.
You. Thank
and
you
we
for
just
being
saw
here.
you because
You're welcome.
You were just on our show, so
I know.
happy to be on yours again.
I just appeared on Movies That Made Us Gay. If you haven't listened to the Jennifer's Body episode, you should absolutely check it out. That was so much fun. I know I keep saying it to you guys, but truly, I feel like I just kept texting Scott like, so was this a blast for everyone else? Because I had a blast. Like, it was so fun.
Feeling mutual.
Yeah, it was definitely fun, and I think our listeners liked the episode. It got some good numbers.
I also love that movie
great
too,
job.
so
Yeah.
I'm glad that we finally got to talk about it on our show.
That was the most important part, is that we all are lovers of that movie, and we only
Absolutely.
briefly talked about it on our show, so that was so good. But thank you
and
guys
I feel
for
like
having me.
Jennifer's Body is the kind of movie that maybe some kids right now that are way too young to watch it, but watched it anyway. When, when they grow up and get a little older, they might look back and think, I should not have been watching Jennifer's Body at that age, but it definitely made me the weirdo cuckoo magoo that I am.
The weirdo
today.
I am today, which is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. My gosh. So we met and we did the Jennifer's Body episode for Movies That Made Us Gay. Freaking blast, if I haven't said it yet. But we talked about that night, what if Scott and Pete came on our show and we talked about the movies that made us weird, because we all have those movies that we watched when we were way too young. Like they just felt a little off, but we also kind of loved them and they formed us into the strange, bizarre, but also completely cool people that we are today. And it's such a good idea. I'm so excited we're doing it. And I hope all of our listeners also write in with their movies that made them weird, because I'm like, this is going to be a whole discussion, especially on our Facebook page. I feel like people are going to get crazy. But Scott and Pete, I want to hear
Yes.
What made you weird? I want to hear. I think,
my
Pete,
goodness.
are you going to kick us off?
I mean, this was so hard to narrow down.
It was hard.
How do you
'Cause
narrow it down? Like, there's so
And I ended up not picking a movie from my childhood too, which was weird. I was very on the fence with a few of them, but I ended up picking a movie that I had only seen until like 5 years ago.
That's why I included that in the intro. I was like, wait, Pete or Scott straight up picked a movie that he saw like kind of recently. But also that counts because I didn't see
totally.
Sleepaway. I said this wrong, I feel like, when I was with you guys. It is Sleepaway Camp, right?
Sleepaway Camp,
Yeah. I didn't see Sleepaway Camp until I was an adult, and it's still...
same for me, yeah.
I watched it in college. Probably like the, I don't know, ideal party age to get around, like, get together with your friends and have some drinks and watch Sleepaway Camp.
Watch Sleepaway Camp.
Yep.
That's absolutely when I watched it as well, and I'm so thankful that I didn't watch it as a child, because I think I wouldn't just be a weirdo. I think I'd be traumatized, possibly institutionalized. I don't even know. I don't know that I would be well.
I don't think our video store had Sleepaway Camp.
Oh my goodness.
When I was growing up, or else I probably would have rented it, have been mentally scarred from it, and then also obsessed with it.
I was going to say, you and Ashley are two of the people that absolutely would have watched it at way too young of an age, because she is the queen of doing it. Yeah.
So when we were tasked by you, Lauren, to come up with the movies that made us weird, because this is kind of the one of the like thesis of like our show is, you know, these movies that kind of turned us into the people that we are today. Again, that we watched when we had no business watching them. You know, as far as like weirdness goes, I really like, I feel like, oh yeah, like Blue Velvet, it's so weird. It's like, yeah, that's weird. Everybody knows that's weird. All right, we get it. But I mean, when I talk about like weirdness, I'm talking about like nitty gritty, like 70s LA, like, you know, dirty, low down, like you're watching this and you're like, is this a porno? I don't even know. Like, is this a real movie? Like, I should not be watching this. Like, how is this on TV right now?
I love it.
Like, I found it in a box in the woods. And like,
I found it while I was camping with my friends, and then 7 days later, our pictures were really blurry, and one of my friends died.
You know what I mean? So I'm talking like crazy, sketched out, weird stuff. And I mean, the movie that I did ultimately end up choosing is a movie called UHF, starring Weird Al Yankovich.
Yes,
the ultimate weirdo.
The ultimate weirdo.
And the ultimate weirdo. And the thing is, I feel like, you know, it again could be one of those things that like, oh, UHF, it's a parody movie. It's like, you know, Airplane and, you know, Scary Movie and all that. And while yes, it is. It has those parody elements. Weird Al does come from the like real nitty gritty weirdo fringe of comedy. Yes,
he absolutely does.
And there are people in this movie that kind of are from that fringe comedy world that I want to talk about. And that's kind of why this movie has stuck with me for so long. I'm so
happy you chose it. It's so good. It reminds me of my childhood, but also it was so fun to rewatch it in preparation for this episode, where I was just like, man, like, all of the memories are coming back, but also I was like, I kind of love this weird fringe comedy, and I love all of the cast members. It's incredible.
Oh my goodness, this cast is great.
Yeah.
So UHF was released in 1989. It was directed by Jay Levy, and it stars Weird Al Yankovic. And Al plays George Newman, who is habitually unemployed, can't hold down a job, but it's just because he has this fantasy life that he just kind of gets lost in.
I was thinking of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Yes,
very Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Especially how it begins.
Yeah. And, you know, again, it starts off on a straight up Indiana Jones parody. So you're watching, you're like, okay, this is a parody movie, you know, Kentucky Fried Movie, whatever. Which also, Kentucky Fried Movie is very fringe comedy when you watch it. You're like, what is this?
Fringe comedy, but I can't really make it past the first 20 minutes of that movie.
Yes, and that's why it's good.
Yes. But due to, a crazy turn of events, George Newman inherits a UHF television station. And back in the days of terrestrial television, UHF stands for ultra high frequency, and they were the channels that network television was not UHF. That was, I think it's VHF. Network television, I'm talking CBS, NBC,
right,
ABC, Fox. That was in LA, they were the low numbers, 2, 4, 7.
Oh yeah.
Ours were oh god. Okay, ours were CBS was 2, ABC was 5, and NBC was 12.
That feels so wrong.
And then
NBC has been 4. NBC has always been 4.
4.
CBS is 2.
Always 4. It's 4 on the East Coast and the West Coast. Yeah,
I believe 4 in Montana was PBS.
See?
Yep.
Crazy. And the UHF channels were the ones that were a lot of local access. Here in LA, it was, the Spanish language channels, the Korean language channels, PBS. A lot of times PBS is local, so public television is UHF, so that's a little bit higher up there. And so UHF in this movie is a local channel, just a low wattage antenna, and it has 0 programming on it. And George Newman is just perfect. I can take this television station and make it my own.
Work with it.
And work with it. You get a lot of crazy Weird Al kind of parody ideas in there, like Conan the Librarian.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there's all these kind of little vignettes of
Conan the Librarian. I still laugh at.
It's clever.
Don't you know the Dewey Decimal System? Oh my God.
Yeah, all of these vignettes of this bizarre programming.
Yes.
That I'm assuming that they're just making these commercials.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
1000%.
Mm-hmm.
Making the commercials. They're using the staff at the station. The staff, we get, Fran Drescher is in there, a very young Fran
I was
Drescher.
Speaking of loving the
cast,
cast, I love that Fran Drescher.
Fran Drescher saying this job really sucks is just me at work every day. Her character introduction also is kind of amazing.
It's phenomenal.
Of
you just see her at the desk.
How we're seeing her at the desk, and she finds out that there's a new station manager, and she's just Jesus Christ.
What are you doing to me?
Another
I can't put up with this anymore. She's all of us. She's perfect.
Yes. There's also the rival network affiliate station that is out to crush Channel 62. It's Channel 8. Again, they're a network. They're Channel 8. George and friends are Channel 62. Channel 8 is out to crush Channel 62, and, hijinks and hilarity ensues. But I want to talk about a lot of the kind of straight up stone cold weirdos that populate this cast. Right? I know. So at the network affiliate, Channel 8, we have the head honcho guy who's played by Kevin McCarthy. And Kevin McCarthy is a fun he plays RJ Fletcher. And Kevin McCarthy I love. He's a character actor. He's got a very specific kind of, not a high-pitched voice, but he's got a very specific voice. He's got a crazy pinched face. And, Kevin McCarthy was in the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers in 1956.
Right. Yes.
That's incredible.
The movie that haunted me forever. Yeah.
Yes.
That, especially that last shot. Yeah. It's
oh
I'm
my
done
God.
For. Yeah.
Yes. Because of that, he was in Inner Space later on in 1987, which we love, but that was definitely Joe Dante saying, who would be fun to use is Kevin McCarthy from the original, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Let's bring him in to play this villain.
Right.
Plays a villain in this movie. Cuckoo bananas,
right?
For
sure.
What I'm here, but who I'm here to talk about is the actor that in the movie UHF that plays his son, right? He is the news broadcaster at Channel 8. His name is Richard Fletcher, and he's played by John Paragon. John Paragon is, oh my God. Okay. So John Paragon is known mostly for his work on Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Yes!
He played John B. the Genie.
Yep, John B.
And he was the voice of Terry the Pterodactyl. Yes. Pee-wee.
Oh my God, that was good.
He Thank you. He got to start in the LA-based improv group The Groundlings,
Ever
along
heard
with Paul
of
Rubens, Pee Wee Herman. I know, ever heard of it? Along with Paul Rubens, Phil Hartman, Joey Arias, Cassandra Peterson, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Hello,
listeners. If you are a big Elvira, Mistress of the Dark fan like ours, you might know John Paragon.
Yes.
Yeah.
From the beginning of Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, he is the weird hitchhiker that she picks up on the side of the road.
Nope. John Paragon. Ellen, that's not the truth, Ellen. He is the gas station attendant that Elvira blows up.
And he's smoking.
You were on the right
who am I
track.
thinking of? I'm thinking of the writer of the movie.
That is John Paragon. You're thinking the hitchhiker is Joey Arias, who is also a Groundlings guy.
You just said Joey Arias. Okay,
I said
sure.
Joey Arias. This like LA 70s Groundlings scene was like super punk rock. Joey Arias, who's gone on to become a legendary drag performer. They've performed with I don't know if you've ever watched old SNL, and David Bowie is on SNL doing a musical performance, and he's like in a dress, like in a business suit, and Klaus Nomi is next to him, and Joey Arias is on the other side. He was like worked with them to, just LA in the 70s, this like punk comedy drag, like all this stuff was all intertwined, and John Paragon was right in there.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. I've definitely
everybody.
seen that. Oh gosh, SNL was thriving back then. It's just the best.
Oh my god, so great. So John was nominated for an Emmy for his writing on the Pee-wee's Playhouse Christmas special. He wrote the screenplay for Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and Haunted Hills. He worked very closely with Cassandra Peterson, Elvira, on most Elvira projects, including her yearly Not Scary Farm performances. He also worked with Disney Imagineering on incorporating improv into attractions at the Disney parks.
Yes, please.
And, to this day, they are heavily relying on improv with face characters, especially in Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah.
Because these characters now, not only it's not just a meet and greet with the photo, they fully have to talk to these kids, answer questions, and just embody, there's Ray. And then, they have a whole, like, it's not scripted.
No,
it can't be
not
scripted,
even a little bit.
I
love that so much. Like, I hope that
great?
he was like
that.
on the, like, truly on the ground floor of that, because that is one of my favorite parts of Disney now, and like Galaxy's Edge specifically. I don't know the name of the character because it's not a character in the movies, but you guys have been there semi recently as well, where I don't know if you ever see in Galaxy's Edge, there's a character that like kind of takes kids under their wing. It's like there's a female and a male. They're just dressed as if they're in the same world as Ray, but they're not actually from the movie.
Sure.
And they will just take the kids with them and be like, hey, will you go on this mission with me? And if the parents are cool with it, they walk along. And it's totally exactly what you're describing, where they improvise and they take the kids along and put on this full show for them. And I mean, maybe it's just me being like a mom and emotional and cheesy, but I'm watching it just like, hey, you are so talented the way you're just working on your feet, but also this is such a special and cool immersive moment, and it's like they're doing that for everyone.
Totally.
Anyway, I think that's so cool.
No, I think even the princesses now, so much more than in the past, are interacting and embodying the character.
It's so much more.
And so I like to think that a little bit of that training comes from John Paragon, his Groundlings, his Groundlings framework, and just his improv skills. And we're gonna say yes. We're gonna say that came directly from John.
Directly,
Do you think
heard
that
it.
John Paragon came up with some of the Jungle Cruise jokes?
Some Jungle Cruise jokes?
Gosh, I hope so.
I mean, those jokes are
they're old,
though.
but they
those
still
are
make
older
me
than him.
giggle every time. Backside,
Absolutely.
what is it? Backside of water.
Absolutely.
What is it?
Backside of water. So, unfortunately, John Paragon did pass away at his home in Palm Springs in April of 2021. He was cremated, and his ashes are currently in Cassandra's possession. And she does plan on submitting them to the Hollywood Forever Cemetery.
I love that.
But he was never married. He never had children, and historians will say it was his choice. But I mean, knowing what I know of the circles that he ran in and how long and close of a friendship he had with Cassandra Peterson, and I'm thinking it was probably he enjoyed the company of men, if you know what we're talking about.
I was like, I'm not gonna say it, but
yeah. So we love John Paragon. I think he's just kind of a legend in that like LA improv fringe comedy scene. Especially from the 70s and 80s. But I mean, his work has definitely lived on, and he's got a big role in this movie. He's a slimy little guy. He trips Billy Barty, teeny Billy Barty.
That part always bums me out. Little person icon of the 80s, Billy Barty. I mean, name a movie from the 80s with a dwarf or a little person.
Yeah.
And
Billy
Barty is usually found in that cast.
Yes, 1,000%. Yeah, that was a sad moment.
That was sad. And his little arm was all scuffed up, his little elbow, like Fran's like.
Get him some Neosporin.
And also, I mean, just like, what kind of a funny joke is that the cameraman?
The cameraman's a little person,
and
it's just pointed up, like that's a Weird Al.
Like just the angled up. That was so Weird Al. Also, I meant to say this at the beginning, speaking of just Weird Al comedy in general. Were you guys raised in a Weird Al house?
I bought I think Eat It. I bought the album that Eat It was on. I loved it. I got the tape. I had the cassette tape. Yeah,
I was gonna say the first one I had was cassette.
Yeah. And Like a Surgeon, I think we might have had like a 45.
I forgot about Like a Surgeon. Gosh, that's funny.
I don't think that we ever bought any Weird Al albums, but I mean, on the grade school playground, like everybody was singing all of those songs at the time.
Yeah, it's like it's from our childhood for sure.
But the other thing about it too is that like, it's parody songs and he's not really writing his own music and blah blah blah. Those lyrics are next level genius.
Clever as hell, and to piece them together with the song, I'm like, that is still talent that people are not understanding. And
the Phantom Menace, American Pie, like that song. There's so many lyrics. That is like, oh my God, Pulitzer Prize. Give him the Pulitzer.
I had to ask because I like had this conversation today while I was at work with some of the other teachers at the preschool, which is funny that we were talking about Weird Al. But they were like, one of the teachers said, "Oh, I was raised on Weird Al," and the other was like, "I don't think I really discovered him until I was older." And so it was this funny conversation of some people like grew up singing those songs; they are just ingrained in their lives, and other people were like, "Yeah, like I know who he is. He's kind of funny." And I say Weird Al raised me. I know that's an exaggeration, but like my sister and I danced around in the living room to like one of his polka mashups. Because he was like the king of doing like a good polka mashup song. We would dance around to that, and then
that
still
accordion.
To this day, the accordion.
And the big song that he has in this movie, I mean, that's most iconically Weird Al. It's the Ballad of Jed Clampett.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Ballad of Jed Clampett.
It's so
the
good.
Beverly Hillbillies.
So good.
Yes, I love it.
Yes. I mean, kids, listeners, if you're not familiar, go on to Tubi. It's free, and you can watch the Weird Al Show, which was kind of like Pee-wee's Playhouse, but more kind of teen, young adult angle. And there's like really good bands on there. Well, also Hanson does.
I know, like Ella.
But he also has crazy. Judy Tenuta is like always on the Weird Al Show, and again, fringe weirdo comics. Much like my second weirdo of UHF, Emo Phillips.
Woo!
So Emo Phillips was a stand-up comic. He in UHF he plays a character by the name of Joe Early, and it's early in the movie when they don't really have great programming yet, and he's a local shop teacher, and he accidentally cuts his finger off, right? And it's bleeding everywhere, and he has a weird like page boy haircut, and he's got this high falsetto voice, and he talks really slowly, and it has a very specific way of talking. Well, that's Emo Phillips' like whole gig, right? So Emo Phillips, he was part of the 1980s stand-up comedy explosion, right? Stand-up comedy was just a huge thing in the 80s. There were TV shows everywhere, Comic Strip Live, Half Hour Comedy Hour, stand-up
that was
Spotlight.
like the way to come up in the comedy world.
Every show had a stand-up comedy like half hour, and every comedian that we knew in the 80s or 90s started off as a stand-up, and Emo Phillips was one of them. It's the stage name of Philip Sultanic. Emo Phillips was a persona that he came up with. He had this page boy haircut. He wore these like very childish clothes, suspender or overalls with like striped shirts and like kind of childish clothes. His comedy was like non sequiturs. If you think of like a Mitch Hedberg,
yeah.
Just a little joke that was just like it starts off one way and it ends.
That's what I love about Mitch. Like, I know he got a lot of shit for a while. I don't even remember why. I feel like people were trying to cancel him, but he didn't actually do anything. Everyone was just like, should we be against this comedy? And I was like, no, it is the smartest comedy. It's so good.
So good.
Those little one-liners.
Yeah, the way to come up with those one-liner jokes. It's like, why? They don't all have to be stories. Every comic has a different thing.
Totally.
And that style of performance, it's called a paraprosdokian.
Oh.
Look it up. It's a real word.
That's real.
It's a figure of speech where the latter half is surprising or unexpected and causes the listener to reinterpret the first part.
Oh.
So Mitch Hedberg says like, I haven't slept in 10 days. But that would be too long to sleep anyway. Like, it's a weird, like, they don't make, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Not your best example, Pete.
Not my best example. I got some good ones. What are some good Mitch Hedberg? I was at a job interview and they asked me, where do you think you'll be in 5 years? Celebrating the 5-year anniversary of you asking me this question?
Oh my God. Yes. That's like,
just doesn't make any.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so Emo really had these weird little but he was kind of off-putting in his delivery because he had that falsetto voice. Not Mitch. Mitch was great. We love him. But Emo Phillips had this really weird way of delivering his jokes. And it was this persona that he put on. And not a lot of comics do a full character on stage. It's a whole other thing, right? And so Weird Al found him and was just like, I love this guy. He toured with him, he put him in his movie, he put him on the Weird Al show, along with, Judy Tenuta, Judy Tenuta had like also an accordion, like Al.
Mm-hmm. Perfect fit.
But she would wear like prom dresses and tiaras and like smeared makeup. And like, had like crazy jokes about like men or whatever. And she didn't actually play I know she can play the accordion, but she would just kind of like squeeze it and just not really make songs out of it.
Yeah.
So Al would just surround himself by these other cuckoo people, right? And so he puts Emo in this movie. And all of those people kind of, the thing that ties them all together, and somebody else that's in this movie is Dr. Demento. Mm-hmm. Now, Dr. Demento is barely in UHF, but he is in it.
He is, and
is sitting important. In Stanley's. Yes, he's sitting in the audience of Stanley Spadowski's Clubhouse, and Stanley Spadowski, played by Michael Richards of Seinfeld, squirts whipped cream in his mouth. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that's it.
That's the whole.
But the thing about Dr. That's the whole cameo. But the thing about Dr. Demento is that he kind of launched Weird Al and a lot of these other fringe comics into mainstream popularity.
He's the reason they are who they are.
Yes.
I mean, we were watching YouTube videos of him today, and he's sort of that classic weird person that David Letterman would just have on.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was like him and who was the comic book artist? Who did American Splendor?
Who did American Splendor?
Just these weird people that David just thought were just hilarious.
It was like, this is my
weird
humor. Like, I'm bringing on the weirdos.
Yeah. And it's that absurdist humor. It's that, I just keep saying fringe, but it is. So Dr. Demento is, again, a persona of Barry Hansen. He was an American radio broadcaster and record collector who specialized in novelty songs, comedy, and strange or unusual recordings that date from the early days of phonographic records all the way up to the present. Okay, so the Dr. Demento persona was founded while he was working at KPCC in Pasadena in 1970.
Yes, Pasadena. Yeah, I was going to say, shout out for you guys.
He would sprinkle in comedy and novelty songs into an oldies show that he had. And the listener response for the novelty songs was so positive that the station let him spin it off into just a comedy show. And when I say novelty songs, I'm thinking Monster Mash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Grandma got run over by a reindeer. These they're stupid. These songs, they're so stupid.
But classics.
Camp Granada.
But yeah, Camp Granada.
Granada's
Hello,
a good one.
Mudda. Hello, Fada. All.
Mhm.
And just anything that would be in like Homer Simpson's record collection.
Sure.
You know, this is all what Dr.
Right.
Demento.
These are my records,
is
and then
spinning.
these are your
And
records,
listen to
Marge.
So he would play this song called Transfusion by an artist called Nervous Norvis on the air, and another DJ at KPCC, the obscene Steve Clean,
Oh boy.
said that you would have to be demented to play that song because it was so crazy. So Transfusion is a song about a reckless driver who breaks traffic laws and continuously gets into accidents. And he says, just give me a blood transfusion and I won't drive terribly anymore. And in between these like silly lyrics and him asking for a transfusion, there were sound effects of like car crashes. And this song was released in 1956, and it was just deemed so like offensive and in such terrible taste that it was like banned on like legit radio stations. And KPCC it's a college radio station.
Mhm.
So it was a little bit more underground, so they let him play it. And so that's where the Dr. Demento name came in, and it just kind of stuck, and he liked it. And the show kind of became popular. It became syndicated, and Weird Al was a fan. And when he was in high school, Dr. Demento was doing a tour of high schools, weirdly.
What?
And he showed up at Weird Al's high school, and Al gave him a self-produced tape of a parody song that he had made, and Dr. Demento loved it so much, he's like, I'm playing this on the air, played it on the air, fans loved it, went crazy for it, and the response was so big that Demento was like, people need to hear you, like, you have something, you're amazing. He financed Al to record and produce his very first parody track, which was it's a parody of Another One Bites the Dust, and it is called Another One Rides the Bus. And
I love that so much.
And that's yes. And Another One Rides the Bus became such a hit that it got Al his first record deal. And
thank you, Dr.
Al's career
Demento.
took off, right?
Yeah.
And Dr. Demento's career kind of took off, and he became nationally syndicated on even more stations.
Nice.
And he started getting a little bit more legit comics, but still people that he wanted.
Right.
So he would
Mhm.
still get fringy, kind of freaky deaky, kind of
Right.
weirdo people on his show, but he was able to bring in comedians and not just
Bigger
musicians,
names and-
but
yeah.
you know,
That's so cool.
yeah. And so, Dr. Demento and the Funny Five, every week he would have like the top 5 like funny songs or top 5 rated songs that people would listen to. And in high school, I actually would listen to Dr.
Really?
Demento, like, and it was on at like midnight or like 1 o'clock.
I was going to say, was it like
And
the
I would have
weirdest
to, like,
show of time?
the weirdest hours, and I would have to like sit with my Walkman and like
the Walkman.
the tiniest, microest movements to get the station because KPCC.
If you moved remotely,
was like-
it was done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would just get
Yeah.
static. Yeah.
I was like miles away, and there was like a hill in between, so I was just like, "Oh my god!"
Oh my
So I'm like
gosh.
making these tiny movements. I would get it, and then I would have to just lay in bed, and it's 1 o'clock in the
Still
morning,
as
so
a
I just lay
statue.
in bed and and listen to
That
Dr.
is so good.
Demento, and that's his whole thing. He says like the Funny Five, and there's been jokes about Dr. Demento and how terrible it is, like on The Simpsons, and it's like, again, it's not for everybody. It's obscure. It's weird. I think the whole parody song and novelty music genre, those people are weirdos. It's very like flea market crowd, and like Dr. Demento wears a top hat, and it's all that like drama kid energy.
Sure. Yeah.
Colorful socks.
That's why I
Yeah.
love it.
But you know what though?
I am the theater kid who is here for it. Like always.
And like I don't care. I think the Monster Mash is hilarious. I'll listen to it every year.
Right?
I can't.
Like my number one Halloween song.
And the thing is, the holidays is like a huge subgenre of novelty music because, like you said, Grandma Got Run Over by
Absolutely.
Reindeer.
Weird,
all these, like,
weird Christmas music,
Yeah,
weird
yeah.
Halloween music. Yeah.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
And so
Mhm.
I just love something like Weird Al or Pee Wee or a performer like John Paragon or Cassandra Peterson, Elvira, who have these crazy acts that when they were created for adults, underground, very punk rock, and they've just kind of get not filtered, but kind of like brought to the mainstream in a way that everybody can say, okay, I really like that. It's like, okay, well then you really like some punk, dirty, weird shit because
even if they don't,
into the weird
even if they're
stuff.
not completely conscious of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah, it's like, oh, you don't realize you're a weirdo like the rest.
And that's
of
the thing,
us.
like you don't realize how gay all that shit is, like how queer and
Oh my
punk
gosh,
and
yeah.
like, you know, nitty gritty it all can be, and all these people just kind of bring that all to the forefront. And it's so funny how so much of it, a lot of it ends up becoming family programming.
Yeah,
you know,
mm-hmm.
Al and Pee Wee did not start off for kids. Elvira did not start off for kids, but Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, we stand by Elvira, Mistress of the Dark being a family film.
Oh yeah, it's pretty. I mean, fun for the whole family, even if there's boob jokes. In it.
Totally,
especially if there's boob jokes.
Even if there's a whole lot of boobies. Yeah, but no, she's for
Then there's something about
for the kiddies.
When Weird Al and UHF or Elvira and Mistress of the Dark, of these weirdo fringe people that have to sort of interact with everyday society,
the straight
sort of, you just see how they play, just sort of running wild, if you know what I mean.
Totally
absolutely.
So,
I love it.
So I just love that, like I said, I keep bringing it up, but it's this LA underground, like this improv comedy thing that's just it's a part of mainstream now, but like, you know, at the time, these people were not welcome in most homes, you know.
The Groundlings was not like a household name of comedy yet.
Yeah. And so, like...
I made the joke tonight. I'm like, ever heard of them? Back then, everyone was like, no, absolutely not. What is Groundlings?
Exactly. And so, you know, I definitely recommend, you know, you can go out. I mean, of course, watch UHF, but it's like I said, on Tubi is the Weird Al show. The Weird Al movie's coming out.
Yeah, I was going to say, are we all excited for the Weird Al movie?
I'm like, this was like accidental promo that we brought up Weird Al when this movie's about to come out. I am so excited about it, especially because I thought it was going to be more of a biographical
so did I.
Sure.
Type
what were you thinking?
Yeah, with Daniel Radcliffe, which I was already here for, but I love that it's parody.
But it makes total sense that it's a parody movie about a biography. So I was not familiar that this movie was partly inspired by a fake movie trailer about the life of Weird Al. So I did not know that.
Was it
he had to
really?
inform me about that.
So the writer of this movie, the writer of the Weird Al movie, he wrote a sketch for Funny or Die about 5 or 8 years ago, and the sketch, the video, is essentially a movie trailer for a fake Weird Al biopic, and Aaron Paul plays Al. Olivia Wilde plays Madonna. Patton
controversial.
Patton Oswalt is Dr. Demento, and the funny thing is when you watch that trailer, it's the new trailer for the Dan Radcliffe movie. They cut it. They cut it to match the original Funny or Die video.
That's so good.
And so
that makes me so happy.
All the stuff about Al, like strung out on drugs,
it's like Madonna,
and drinking,
like Madonna getting him into drugs and showing him this life. I'm so obsessed with that storyline, though. I love that that's so the way it's going, and it makes me happy that it's not just like, oh, here's a bio, like learn about Weird Al. I kind of love that it's going the parody route, because that is Weird Al to his core. It's how
I also love too that in both of the projects we get Aaron Paul and Dan Radcliffe, two short kings, first of all.
Yeah, short kings. We love a short king. We love a short king.
Which I mean, I think Al is probably like 5'10", so I don't know why they went with these two short kings.
He's tall.
Yeah. But the thing about both Aaron Paul and Dan Radcliffe is that they're both like ripped.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
They have
right.
these jack bodies.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Daniel Radcliffe has this
That's my
like thick
favorite
ass.
part. Yeah.
I love it.
It's so perfect. Like,
That's my
honestly,
favorite
look
part.
nothing like Al, but like, let's go.
No, not
It's
at all.
great.
Yeah. But again, parody, just like, let's just
Yes,
make it,
it's
let's just make it
perfect.
stupid, and we
Yeah.
love just stupid humor. Just make us laugh,
Truly.
like make us laugh. That's all we're asking for.
Yeah.
So UHF, it's a kooky, it is a parody movie. It is just silly, silly
it's
visual
weird
jokes.
as hell. It's great though.
But it's freaking weird.
So I did not grow up on UHF. I mean, definitely
Okay.
very familiar with Weird Al as a kid, like I mentioned.
Yeah.
But I did not watch this movie until I started going out with Pete. Me personally, I don't love this movie as much as Pete does.
Hey, that's
it's
okay.
super charming.
Yeah.
But what I do like about this movie is that it's a movie about sticking it to the man. And I mean,
Yes.
and what just sort of a
Yeah.
theme that everybody can get on board with.
We
is
all
just
can relate to that.
is sticking it to the man.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, there's like the quintessential scene towards the end where, I mean, it's got to be one of the Fletchers. The boss is like, I don't give a shit about the
Yeah.
community. And like, we always need that, like, did you know you were being recorded moment.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was
Love
everything classic that we needed. But also,
Mhm.
as I said before, as somebody just like raised being obsessed with Weird Al, this movie did have a special place
Yeah.
in my heart. So I
Good.
love that you had that weirdo upbringing.
Yay.
As it goes, Scott, it doesn't have to be a movie from your childhood. You saw this 80s movie recently, and I just watched it for the first time last
Oh my
night.
gosh.
I'm going to be real
Wow.
honest, listeners. I just watched it
Yeah?
last
Yeah.
night, and I
Had you ever heard
It's
of this
okay.
movie? Okay, well, I'll give
I
the
haven't
intro
even-
and talk
okay.
a little bit about it.
Yeah, I was like, yes and no, because when you sent me the link and we're talking about it, I was like, I've never heard of this. And even when I first started, but as it went on and then I started to do my research, I had heard about it just in the, I don't want to give too much away, but just in the fact
Yeah.
that like it was dangerous as hell.
Yes.
And
Oh my God.
I do remember like the controversy and it being released to America later. But anyway, I know you're going to
Mhm.
dive into all of
I'm
it.
still stressed out. We watched it last night too, and I'm still stressed.
I was texting Scott, like, I'm not okay. Like, this is,
Yeah.
I was watching through my fingers.
It's a
was
lot.
not- it was a lot. It was a bit too much, I'll be honest, but please dive in.
Okay.
So, the movie that I guess made me weird. It is a movie
Yeah.
called it is a movie called Roar. It was released in 1981. It is directed by Noel Marshall. It stars Tippi Hedren from The Birds, her daughter Melanie Griffith, John and Jerry Marshall, and Noel Marshall. And also John and Jerry are the sons of the director, of Noel Marshall.
Right,
And
right.
just to start of kind of begin this discussion, I'll read you the tagline of the movie.
I was going to
Here's the
say, yeah,
tagline
how
of
was it
Roar.
presented?
No animals were harmed in the making of this film. 70 cast and crew members were. The most dangerous movie ever made. So, Roar. Where to
Yeah.
begin with Roar?
Oh my God.
So I feel like I first heard of this movie about 6 years ago when the Alamo Drafthouse was re-releasing this movie. They were doing sort of like a nationwide tour of this movie.
Yeah.
And I kept reading reviews of this movie called Roar. And I'm like, all right, I need to check this movie out. I'll give a little synopsis of it later. But we went to it in the movie theater, and it was one of those movie theater experiences that was so much fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Seeing it with a group of people.
Was that, wait, when you saw it at Alamo Drafthouse, was that when it was first released in like North America, or was that?
So we saw it at
It's at the silent movie.
we
theater.
saw it at the Silent Movie Theater, and I
Yeah.
think that it was
Oh, okay.
released by Cinefamily there. But Alamo
Yeah.
Drafthouse kind of
Yeah.
did
started the
Okay.
yeah.
did this circulation
Yeah.
for it. And this had been a long since out of print movie. I don't even think this movie even really was officially released. There's a release date for it, but I don't even think it even was given a proper run in the theater.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a quick little like 2-sentence synopsis of Roar. Roar's story follows Hank, a naturalist who lives on a nature preserve in Africa, with lions, tigers, and other big cats. When his family visits
my.
him, they are instead confronted by the group of animals in the house. I think that to tell the story of the making of Roar, you have to begin with Noel Marshall and his wife, Tippi Hedren. And Noel Marshall was kind of this kooky guy. He was an agent, producer. He worked as a director, as an actor, and he moved to Hollywood and he began kind of backing movies. He was one of the original people who invested in The Exorcist when they adapted it into a movie. And he married Tippi Hedren in 1964. And with them as a couple, when she was making a movie called Satan's Harvest in Africa.
Oh, I love Satan's Harvest.
Just
kidding. I've never heard of it.
I was like, I don't know anything about Satan's Harvest.
I think that when she was making this movie, that's sort of what ignited their passion in saving big cats.
The big cats, yeah.
Kind of they were all about sort of the preservation of where these cats lived. A lot of just sort of big cats that just sort of they need to find homes for them.
Well, poaching in Africa is a problem.
Absolutely.
You know.
I was kind of thinking later on when they would rescue them of just sort of when they would just get big cats.
Sure.
That didn't work out for their owners.
Okay.
Too.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Tiger King style.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, listeners, if you're not familiar with Tippi Hedren from The Birds, you know, she
from The Birds and Marnie.
Beautiful, love The Birds. But she has a big game, or big cat preserve out here in Southern California. It's called Shambhala. It's a big cat rescue. And it's just been this lifelong passion of hers.
Which I think is so cool.
And it kind of it is really cool. It's kind of a cool, you know, aspect of her life. And it kind of all stems back from her relationship with Noel Marshall.
Yeah.
Noel Marshall. And this movie is an early part of what sprung from that relationship.
Yeah, I mean,
and
so when they were making
friggin' wild.
This movie, Satan's Harvest in Africa, they heard of the story of, and they may have even seen it, of this house of this game preserver, and his house was just overtaken by a pack of lions. So they as a couple just thought, wouldn't that be a wild idea for a movie? And they just sort of tried to kind of get this movie together, and it took them like years to get financing for the movie. In the meantime, back in Los Angeles, in their house, they just started taking in big cats. And this is where you get all of those wild photos
just the cats
of
hanging out by
Tippi
the pool.
Hedren and young Melanie with just like a
It's
lion
so
sitting in their
wild.
living room.
Yeah,
They're just
or
chilling.
in their bed. Like,
Scott was
they're
sending me some
insane.
of those, and I was like, these are so beautiful and so badass and cool, but I also just, which like Pete, we kind of mentioned before, I just am watching in terror. I'm like, what about that moment where they just flip? They freak out. I think about like the woman who had, I forget what it was, if she had a chimp who was living with her and it went crazy and ripped off her face.
Oh,
and
God.
I'm just like, you don't know when they're going to turn.
I mean,
Corey style
Oh my
from
God.
Nope.
yeah. We all saw Nope. Like, no.
So this movie, when they finally got it made, had an 11-year accident-ridden production due to many elements of the movie.
11-year
11-year production with many mishaps and damages caused on set. The cast and crew worked with real big cats that they had kind of acquired at their Shambhala Reserve, which is sort of at the very edge of the valley. Isn't it kind of an
valley.
Edge Valley?
Way out in the valley.
Like it's like
barely
it's
Southern California.
pretty much
It's
pretty much Bakersfield.
Yeah.
Like
And
going out there.
listeners, if I know Bakersfield, listeners, if you have not watched this movie, when we say the cats have taken over the house, it is like it's not
full,
like one or two lions and a tiger. This is
I have never seen so many
brothers.
Big cats.
This is some Circus Vargas realness.
And we're talking
crazy
lions, multiple lions,
tigers,
panthers,
pumas,
jaguars, pumas,
cheetahs. It's every kind of large exotic cat you can think of. They're so majestic and beautiful, but when there is a person in the room with them, you're just like, I should not be seeing this.
Yeah.
Yes, I just kept waiting for this moment where it was going to go completely out of control, and I was like, "And is the
Oh no, there were several of those moments in the movie.
I don't know.
No, it was all real.
And here's the thing with having these big, especially male lions, is that male lions aren't really accustomed to being
Hanging out with each other.
around a lot of male lions. So
they're
they'd
like,
be getting in
"Hey,
fights.
get out of my space."
Even if they're not going to kill each other, they're going to beat each other up.
Absolutely.
Because they're just trying to be dominant with one another.
Yeah.
And I know with Noel is usually when he would get injured, he said, it was when the male lions were fighting and they would pretty much
try to break them up.
He would try to break them up, and he said the lions would almost treat him like he was a lion.
Sure.
And they would give him a
So he wasn't
whack
even just
upside
caught
the
in the
head.
scuffle. They were just straight up like, "Oh no, we're going to beat the shit out of you too." Like he was included.
And
there's a scene where he's like running, and one of the and it looks like a female. It doesn't have a mane, but like a lion comes up and straight tackles him, and he falls. There's scenes where like they just shove their arms in the lion's mouth.
Like,
You're
are
just
we
like,
all
"Do you see
experiencing
that
this
too?"
together? Why is it okay?
Like-
I can't.
It's
So kind
so
of
stressful.
the big the notable injuries on set. So Noel
God.
was he was I think sort of
Okay.
mauled or bitten by a cheetah. That was his
Okay.
big injury.
a cheetah.
So this movie is shot by Jan de Bont. Are you familiar with Jan de Bont? Jan de Bont is the director of Twister.
Yes.
So this was sort of his big start in Hollywood.
I love Twister. I cannot believe that. That makes me feel so much more connected.
So cinematographer Jan de Bont was mauled by a lion on set. Over 120 stitches were needed to sew his scalp back in place.
120?
After medical treatment, de Bont returned to
in his
production
head.
to complete his DP duties.
I'm going to cry. That is absurd.
So if things had gone slightly to the left, we would not have Twister as we know
Exactly. We wouldn't have The Haunting either.
Thank God for those
Speed.
100 speed, baby.
I love Speed,
Speed too. Yeah, 120.
I read a
stitches,
quote
man.
from him today about it. That was really
120 stitches.
That was really interesting. He said it was pretty dangerous. Roar is the only picture I almost lost my head over. It was frustrating at times, but I was hooked. The cats were fascinating. They never did the same thing twice. The technical problems were gigantic. When you shoot with 5 cameras simultaneously, each had to be ingeniously disguised so they don't appear in the shot. This was my first Hollywood film, and I'll never be the same again. And yeah, that's the thing, is that when you're shooting these chaotic scenes, they probably had to use like 4 cameras to get all of the angles of everything to cut together.
Absolutely.
And it's still weird in the edit when you watch it. Like, it's still very disorienting.
It just seemed like they were filming the cats, and they were just like, okay, they're doing that, so now that'll
work around it. Yeah, that's kind of how I felt the whole time was, what is the plot? What story am I supposed to be following? All I see are the cats running around, and these people are like appearing amongst them and kind of doing a thing.
I mean, the plot to me is that Hank is a terrible father.
The worst.
Hank is crazy.
He's the worst husband on earth.
Yeah.
He is a terrible employer.
Yes.
Mativo, his poor Mativo. Like I am Mativo. Poor Mativo.
You are Mativo.
I am Mativo. I'm just like, this is wrong. Get them out of the car. I don't want them near me.
Seriously.
I quit.
Everyone was seeing it except for this guy.
Yeah.
Melanie also was mauled by a tiger. And you can see the shot in the movie. It is the scene in the kitchen.
No.
He's like,
you see
pulling her hair
back.
Okay, I mean, actually,
mouth.
I believe that as you're saying it,
Yeah.
because of course, but
So
I
guess
still had hope.
He's
it
not
was fake.
mauling Mel. He is almost like ripping her hair
He's
out.
scalping
Yeah.
her.
He's scalping her. He's literally
Just a
scalping her.
But that shot is
scalping.
in the damn movie.
Yeah.
Oh,
Casual
Scott.
Yeah, she's fine.
I watched that and was like, this part at least has to be fake. Like, this lion isn't scalping her right now, but he was. Oh my gosh. I can't.
Yeah.
Okay, it's getting worse.
How many
and worse.
stitches did Melanie need?
Yeah, right?
She needed something like 70 or something like that. Like, she needed a lot. Is all I know.
Griffith reportedly received 50 stitches to her face.
50.
It was feared that she would lose an eye, but she recovered. It was not disfigured. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
My God.
And we have Working Girl now.
And now we have Working Girl. Yeah.
I know. I'm thinking of all the things we got after Roar. Like, I'm so
Yeah,
happy the
like
Lions didn't kill any of these.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so this is a real oddball of a movie because just the tone is all over the place.
Yeah.
That you don't really know, is this a conservation movie? Is this trying to
Right.
send a message to protect cats? Or is it wanting us to fear them?
Right.
And the very end, it's like a kumbaya and they all pretty much live in harmony with all of these big cats.
Yeah.
And there was no problems at all. That's what's so crazy about the message of this movie, is that just sort of in the last 15 minutes, it's just like, well,
We're all fine.
they were never really trying to attack us.
Wait, I thought someone did get killed, though. Is that not true?
The poacher
that's the
guy.
poachers.
Oh, yeah. Like the
Togar.
the bad
Togar-
guys. Togar wasn't
The bad
having
guy,
none
yeah.
of it.
I mean, we were all rooting for Togar.
Togar.
Also,
Oh, yeah. I
Togar,
was
by the way,
completely
is
behind Togar.
kind of frightening.
Just
as
covered
well.
in blood.
Always covered in blood.
Just blood, like, drenched into its fur, and you're just like, yeah, this is casual. It's mine. I can't. When I tell
Oh my
I wish
God.
you guys could have I wish we could have watched this together, is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah. It would have been.
I
it would
went
have
through
been fun.
so many emotions watching
It's
it last night.
a roller
Oh, wait,
coaster.
but the compliment I'll give it, and Scott, I said this to you, the music. It felt
Oh, right?
uplifting.
Especially
Yeah.
it's hippy dippy songs at the
Yes.
end.
Yeah.
It reminded me of, I mean, like, The Lion King obviously has some inspirational music
yes.
we've all heard, but what is,
A little bit.
there's a movie, Man of the House, and not the new one that has, like, the cheerleaders.
JTT?
Yeah, thank you. I knew Scott.
JTT
knew
and it's
Scott would have
Chevy
my
Chase,
mother
right?
trucking back.
Chevy Chase,
Chevy Chase and JTT.
Oh my God.
Farrah Fawcett.
Yes,
Yep.
and they're like
Wow.
coming together, that Man of the House, and the way that that movie begins and ends is with like anthems, and I'm so here for it. And it
There you
also,
go.
I feel like, is trying to give us that jungle feel.
I think like the main thing is that anytime somebody gets knocked down or hurt and is covered in blood, I think it's all real.
Yes,
Yeah.
It, like, even the very beginning of the movie where the main guy gets his hand cut, and like that, it, like
Yeah.
there's a big moment surrounding that, and I'm like, but is that real?
Uh-huh.
But is that real?
And I know that
think it
this is a
is.
family that did grow up around all of these lions and tigers. I mean,
Yeah.
for a while, they were kind of a part of their pack. But I mean, when these cats
I don't
kind of
know.
are rough on each other,
Yeah.
like shit's gonna go
It's
down.
gonna
Yeah.
go
Wild
down.
animals are
Mhm.
not meant to be. Yeah, we're not meant to tame
No.
So,
lions.
This movie took 11 years to
11
make,
years.
and by the last 15 minutes, you can sort of tell, oh, so this is where they went back and they shot more scenes, because Melanie looks a good 5 years
She's
older.
aged. Yeah.
They give her this awesome wig. Both of the sons look older.
Their hair is way
and
longer.
They completed it.
Yeah.
So it's like they made this movie. They made this feat of filmmaking.
I mean, they finished it, but
They finished it. They
Like
put
you
it
s-
together.
but like you said, the story when you're watching it, you're just like, what is the story?
Yeah.
I don't know
It-
what the
it's a
story
weird
is. I don't know what
tone.
they're trying to say.
You don't know if all of this is playing for jokes, if it's a comedy.
It's called a
it turns
comedy. That's the
into-
thing, is when I
Yeah.
started to go down the rabbit
Right.
hole, it's like
Mhm.
adventure comedy. Is it a comedy? Because
You're like,
I was
"No."
scared.
But- Well, and it's one of those things that I don't think that was initially the movie that they were trying
Do
to
you-
make.
Yeah,
Is I think that they were setting out to make
a lighthearted.
a thriller.
Oh.
No, I think
A
they were
thriller,
trying to make
okay.
a
A
thriller.
straight up
initially.
adventure thriller,
And
and,
then
it turned
Just
to
sort of
Sure.
when you get all of these
Yeah,
dailies
yeah.
of all of this crazy shit, you just sort of have to take a
And there's
little
there's a naughty elephant that's gonna murder us.
an elephant that was on the Shambhala Reserve too.
Okay.
So that was just their elephant
Then-
that they had.
Oh, that was just their
Just their
family
pet.
elephant.
I thought was wild is that I did
weird.
assume that all of this was shot in Africa. No, this is the Shambhala Reserve
It's just their
in
home.
California.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
I thought it was
Hometown.
Africa.
That's wild. I thought it was Africa too. Yeah. That's too much.
And again, like, regarding the reserve, that's what I found most interesting, was I'm watching this movie in horror, and I'm like, who let this happen? But then, it's funny because you read up on, once it was released later, you know, you saw it at a low-key underground theater, and then it gets released in Alamo Drafthouse, where, like, everybody can come.
Yeah.
And critics are surprisingly into it. It's so funny because I have, like, every piece of me thinking that everyone's going to be like, who made this movie? This is insane. And everyone's like, I love the way they treated the animals in this movie. This is amazing. This is how we wish Hollywood treated the animals. And I thought that was kind of cool. As scared as I was of this movie, I like that a lot of critics were praising the movie, saying, well, they didn't train them. They didn't cage these animals. They were treating them.
They kind of let the animals direct the scenes.
I mean, 1,000%.
And also, this movie, its last directing credit is directed by Noel Marshall and Friends.
Oh, which means
are the Friends the cats?
Friends are the
See,
animals.
I think they are, because in the opening credits, they have that moment where they're like, we feel that we need to list the animals who also were a part of this movie, and then they put them all by name, like Robbie, Bogart,
Yeah.
Robbie, it comes up there first, they love those guys.
Oh,
but
Robbie.
yeah, I mean, also, I think, kind of to ground this movie, if you just look at the life of somebody like Tippi Hedren, she later divorced Noel, because I think this movie was just too much on their marriage, and they parted ways probably right after they made this movie. Just because Noel just seems like a kooky individual and was probably a very difficult man to stay married with. But I also just think that Tippi Hedren in general is just so inspiring, is that she has such a interesting and also kind of a sad story of the Hollywood it girl, of that she made these two huge movies with Alfred Hitchcock, and then I don't know if it was like career blacklist, but she didn't really go on to do anything bigger.
Huge.
And she's kind of went on the record of saying how kind of terrible Alfred Hitchcock was to her during those two movies. That, I mean, she just took all of that passion of being an actress, and she took it into saving big cats.
Which
and I love
do
that.
love.
And we did meet Tippi once. We met her at what comic book convention?
We met her at Stanley's Kamikaze. When it was still called Stanley's Kamikaze. Yeah.
I love that you got to meet her.
I went up to Tippi.
Yes.
She autographed a picture for me. Oh, and I should also mention, I interrupted a conversation she was having with one Miss Morgan Fairchild.
Oh, it's fine.
That I'm just like, excuse me, Miss Hedren, will you please sign my photo? And she was fully like in conversation with Morgan Fairchild.
That's incredible.
That I was just like, I'm dead.
I'm
like,
on the floor.
These two.
That the two of you are together
And
right now.
I remember Pete pointed out that she was wearing the pin that Alfred Hitchcock gave her when he told her that she got the role in The Birds. It's the little bird pin.
So
I had the special edition DVD, and I watched all the special features, and in it she talks about him handing her.
She talks about going out to lunch with Hitch and his wife.
I think it's in the movie The Girl, that scene. And she shows off the pin in the making of, and she's like, and here it is, and she brings it out. And so I'd seen it, and then when we were there, she's wearing like a suit, like a old lady suit, and it's on her lapel, and I was like, that's the pin. And I asked her,
is that the pin
that Alfred Hitchcock gave you? And she tapped it. She said, yes,
yes, honey.
In that beautiful Tippi voice.
Yeah.
And I remember when she was signing my photo, she drew little birds, and her little old lady hands were like shaking as she was writing on the picture.
Sharpie, but she drew little birds in Sharpie on the photo. It was great.
And I mean, I think that when you watch a movie like Marnie or The Birds, I think that she is the most beautiful woman on the planet in those movies.
It's great.
Yeah, she's perfect.
And so. There's
That's Roar.
It's weird.
Honestly, you have to watch it. I'm like, we can only say so much.
You have to watch it
to believe it. So this movie is not available for rental, but you can find a stream of this movie on YouTube. This is what
that
I
link you
for.
sent me. It was perfect. And then there's also, that's what's fun about it, is you go on YouTube and you watch the hour-and-a-half movie, and then below it, it'll be like the making of, the interviews, and you can go down the total rabbit hole on YouTube, which I think is very fun to do. fun and scary.
Yeah, I love that.
But yeah.
You can just watch all the animal attacks. They have it in that too.
I cannot.
All the attacks.
It was too
A
much.
super cut. Oh my goodness.
So yeah, Roar. I think about this movie at least once a week.
That's what I
It's
love
wild.
is that like it's something that you watched just like 5 years ago, and it's still you're like, oh no, this made me weird. Like this is strange.
One of my favorite movie going experiences with an audience too.
I guarantee that was a good time.
Everybody, we were all because no one in that theater had
Of
seen
course
it before. Like,
not.
there was no way
Yeah,
for
there
anybody
was
to
no
have seen
way.
it at that point. So we're sitting there, all of us, just like, oh my god,
Oh
my god.
I know. I felt like the whole time I was watching, I was just going, I was just shouting it.
A lot of that.
But
A lot
Scott,
of
I do have
that,
to ask,
yeah.
and this is putting you on the spot. So because this was just from a few years ago, this can just be like a mention. Do you have a movie from your childhood where you're like, oh, this fucked me up. This made me weird.
So I was very close to picking Nothing But Trouble, directed
Yeah.
by Dan Aykroyd. With Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase,
Love.
and Demi Moore. Because I remember watching this movie on cable a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
And a lot of its weirdness I kind of took for granted, and I didn't really grasp just how fucking insane the movie was. And I feel like I revisited it when I was in college, and I'm like, oh, this movie is certified crazy.
Yeah.
And
Straight up nuts.
why was I so fascinated with this as a kid?
Yes. And I completely agree.
And it's like, Demi Moore, like, you're hot off of Ghost, and you make
this is what you come
this
into?
batshit movie. So Lauren,
Yeah.
so
It's
Lauren,
like,
your
you
movie.
said or. I was like, are you about to call me a different name? What else?
No.
I thought that I called you Ashley for a second.
No.
And I was just like, wait a minute.
It's
I
Lauren.
just stopped
It's
myself.
me.
Brain just
We can edit that out.
cross wires.
Lauren,
Let's talk about
talk about
Okay.
your movie. So I had not seen this movie.
You hadn't.
I was familiar with
Like, you knew
the
about it.
VHS box
Yeah,
from
yeah.
going to our video store as a kid.
and seeing
And there
it.
was something about this movie that I did not want to watch.
Uh-uh.
And when we watched it last night, I totally see why.
No, it's the worst. I mean, not
This
like
movie
it is.
is
It's the worst and the
bananas.
best. And no,
Yeah.
I only.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm talking. I was like, I can't leave everybody hanging. I'm talking about the movie Parents. It's from 1989, and it's so funny because you guys at least knew about it, even if you hadn't seen it.
Yes.
I ran this movie by so many of my friends. Like, this is a good one to talk about, right? Nobody had seen it. They didn't even know about it. And I was
feel like people
what?
of a certain age remember seeing this movie at the video store.
Yeah,
though.
that box was always
The
in.
box.
It was
like,
always in the horror
always.
And
section.
it always
That
stuck out to me the way they were just
classic-
standing in the kitchen and looked so evil. Parents,
Mhm.
1989, which it's awful in the way, and I say that in the way that like I had to rewatch it recently because I was like, oh, I haven't seen this in years, and I was very entertained and like, oh my gosh, this is so dark and ridiculous, and I'm kind of here for it, but I saw it at way too young of an age, which we were talking about earlier, where
Yeah.
I only saw it because it was rented by one of my friends who had like the cool parents who didn't care. They rented it at one of our sleepovers, and I remember like specifically going to Family Video. Did you guys have Family Video? Is that not?
I think that we
across
did
the
have Family
country?
Video, but I don't think that it was the big chain Family Video. I think it was just
Okay,
called
it was just
Family
called-
Video.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I've always wondered if Family Video was a chain.
A weird small town thing.
Yeah, it was like a chain throughout Illinois, but I didn't know if it was across the
Okay,
country.
yeah.
But it was like the lower class blockbuster. It was called Family
Yeah,
Video.
sure, yeah.
And it had like that weird, like clear crystal rock window that like all 90s places did. Like it was like that staple.
I
So
love it.
I remember going to Family Video with one of my friends during a sleepover in the 90s and her being like, I want to watch a scary movie. And I was, trying to stay face. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And we rented Parents. And it was a lot. Parents is a movie directed by, we talked about this last night, Scotty. I did not even make the connection. Bob, how do you even say his last name?
Bob
Balaban?
Balaban.
Balaban.
Yeah.
Which I was like, I know
You've
the
definitely
name.
seen a movie with Bob.
I am one of those
Mhm.
assholes that like, I was like, I know the name, but I can't put it with a face. And then I looked him up and was
Yeah.
like, I feel like such a dick because he's truly been in everything. And I love
Staple of Christopher Guest. He's in a lot of
Yes, a
Christopher Guest
lot
movies.
of Christopher Guest movies, which like we talk about constantly on the podcast, which is why I was so disappointed in myself. But what I loved is, as I was researching him more, because I'm like, oh, I know you as an actor and everything, but he hasn't directed a ton, which I love that, like, this was one of his weird-ass ones in 1989, and this wasn't even released onto DVD until, like, early 2000s, what I found, which, like, I guess DVDs were coming out around then anyway, but it was like, there was a hesitance to even do DVD, I think because people were like, this movie's kind of messed up. And also, it stars Randy Quaid, who is a bit controversial nowadays, but it has Randy Quaid, Mary Beth Hurt, Sandy Dennis, and Brian Madorsky, who I didn't recognize Brian, but the other names, I was like, yes, this has like a decent cast. Basically, Michael is a young boy living in a typical 1950s suburbanite home, but he has bizarre and horrific nightmares and continued unease around his parents, especially his father, Nick, and young Michael begins to suspect his parents are cooking more than just hamburgers on the grill outside. He doesn't know how to explain his fears to his newfound friend Sheila or the school's social worker. I had to learn about cannibals from this movie. I did not know what cannibals were, but I found out from this movie with Randy Quaid, who, in this movie, I felt so uneasy watching him as a child and then again as an adult, and I'm like...
He's very well utilized
just like,
in
there
this
is
movie.
like the Randy Quaid unease that is in like every movie he's in, but in this, he nailed it. And I want to give him credit as an actor, because I know it's easy to say, it's Randy Quaid. Like, he just creeps you out. But he plays the father in this movie. There's this, like, the young boy in this movie is just terrified. He, like, can't even explain why. He's so terrified of his parents, but then the moment that you see an interaction with Randy Quaid, you understand it. And that is what I love about this movie, is you're just immediately like, oh, I'm so scared of this dad. He's controlling. He's overpowering. He has this weird mystery about him. And then the scene that traumatized me, and the reason that I'm weird and love scary things, but also am, like, scared of many things, is there's a scene where the young boy, Michael, catches his parents having sexual intercourse, and both of them come up from the intercourse, like the panting and sweating, the usual, but also have red marks around their mouth, and it looks as if they've been biting each other, like... He's starting to be like, I think they might be doing things beyond just, like, the sex that we're learning about in school. And I, like, that is a scene that I will never forget. I don't know how you guys felt about that scene, seeing it as, like, adults and not as kids. But I, like, even watching
it's crazy.
it the other night, I was sort of like, oh my God, like, this is dark.
I mean, it was crazy because, like, I'm thinking it's happening in the living room.
Yes, it does. It's
like
he's
on the
kind of
floor.
looking over a loft, like over a little planter area, and you're sort of like, oh, is this just in the public? But yeah.
And then it's like the mom's, it's cleverly done, because it's like in the movie, it's like the mom's lipstick and it's smeared on her face, but it's also smeared on dad's face.
Sex?
But and so the son's been having these crazy dreams involving blood and things, and so when he sees them doing
like,
this to each
right?
other, he's just like, wait a minute.
It's like the whole movie is this boy having these nightmares, like Pete was saying about, like, he's seeing a lot of blood. There's even like a really creepy scene where he's hiding in the closet from his mom and a tentacle wraps around the door, and you're sort of like, are aliens involved? Are there monsters? And you don't know if it's just in the kid's head the whole time, but he's having these suspicions of like, no, this feels like tied to my parents and the fear I have of them. And mom is always in the kitchen chopping up something, which I also think is such like a clever nod. And then lo and behold, as the movie goes on, we find out, indeed, they have been chopping up human meat, and they are trying to bring Michael on board with them. They're like on his team, truly loving their son kind of the whole time and like trying to bring him on board. But by the end, once he's found out and he fights against them, then we kind of get this battle. And then we have this amazing ending scene of Michael moving in with his grandparents, but then seeing like a very strange looking sandwich set on the nightstand when he moves in with them, and you're like, it's a family thing. Family business. But it's about cannibals, and honestly, rewatching it as an adult, I don't know if you guys felt this again. I'm like, I have no idea what it's like to see it with like fresh eyes. I sort of watched it the other night and was like, wait, this movie is smarter than I gave it credit for as a child. Obviously, I didn't really understand it, but I was sort of like, this weird fear that people actually do have of like family and not knowing if your parents are actually human, as dramatic as that sounds. Like, you just think of them as like mom and dad and your caretakers, and like they don't have sex and they don't, like, they would never commit a crime and they don't do this, but like something's off with them. And I don't know.
I want to add something on that. There's something to be said with probably baby boomers around Bob Balaban's age, that growing up as children in the 50s and 60s, of you think that you led this very idealistic, perfect life, but then you're sort of looking back on your memories and you start to dig a little deeper and you start to kind of think, oh, things were fucked up then.
Really messed up.
Everybody put on a very happy face that just sort of, we live this idealistic American life, but underneath the surface of all of this is something dark.
Really dark.
And I think that's something that a lot of people our parents' age probably do have to deal with.
1,000%.
With having parents from the 1950s and 60s that just sort of always had an attitude of, well, everything will work out. Like, we don't really want to talk about really serious shit because that's just not how it's done. That's not how we were raised. That's not how you're going to be raised.
Well, like the whole, you know, they live in this like beautiful mid-century split level, you know, ranch house, and you know, and they've got these beautiful cars, and the mom is always in these, you know, dresses.
She's always put together with her apron. It's very 1950s classic. Yeah.
Very 1950s, exactly what you think of. But, you know, the dad, Randy Quaid, he goes off to work and he works at Toxico and he's pretty much developing Agent Orange.
Yes, he is straight, like he's,
you know, like
he's trying to poison the enemies. Like he's in, he's in this lab. And so that's part of the reason that Michael's like, well, my dad has all this power. So,
yeah, his day job is creating like a defoliant. It's like, oh my god. And you know, the movie has very like tones of, I mean, obviously it has tones of like Tim Burton. You know,
I was thinking of Blue Velvet.
Blue Velvet.
Just, and also that very Lynchian thing of, in this kind of idealistic suburban neighborhood, if you draw back the curtains, there's some dark shit going on.
It has that like score by Angelo Badalamenti, who did all, you know, who works with David Lynch.
I was going to say the music at the beginning, again, like the music at the beginning, the music at the end. The moment I turned on the movie, I was like, oh, I feel itchy and I feel wrong. And it it was so like fun and creepy and also eye-opening to watch it again as an adult. And so for anyone who's listening to this who watched it as a kid, I highly recommend watching it again, because it felt like I was seeing these deeper themes as we've been discussing, but also like all of the PTSD rushing back of that sleepover that I had with my friends of just like, why did we choose this movie?
I can't even imagine.
And like, how did we get like the one copy? Because the more I read about it, it was like, yes, we all saw it at our video store, but it seemed like it was also kind of hard to get. Like there would maybe be one copy at the video store. On DVD, they didn't make a ton of copies. Like people didn't necessarily promote this movie in a huge way. And like, if you look at the reviews aren't great. Like my boy Roger Ebert was not a huge fan of it, and it's like I get.
Siskel liked it.
Siskel liked it. It's like I totally get why you aren't a fan of it, but like I appreciate it in a weird way. But yeah, it's just like I saw it way too young. It creeped me out. I didn't fully understand, but putting the cannibalism aside, but it's like, what if the scariest thing in your close circle is your parents, which is kind of, it means something different now as an adult, but I just thought that was fascinating.
Here's a question. Do you think Bob Balaban made this movie for children? Do you think that he made this movie as a horror movie for kids?
Well, yes and no. I should say, I kind of feel like it was a warning to children of like, watch your parents and don't think they're perfect. But also it was absolutely a nod to all of the adults. Because I feel like calling your movie Parents, it did speak to kids. That's why we rented it, the sleepover. It's like Parents, and it had that cheesy cover.
And like the
we knew this little, like this boy was in it who was like close to our age. So I think, like, it was marketed in this weird way, marketed to kids in this weird way. But, yeah, then there's all the nods to adults that are just like, but for real, though, our parents are all fucked up. But, yeah.
Yeah. This little boy in this movie, he just looks so haunted the entire time.
And there's lines that he's not eating, too.
Yeah.
So you're thinking, is this poor child just
He's a
starving?
super picky eater,
Because
and
he's not
he
wanting to
looks,
eat anything that they're giving him.
he looks very thin, has the dark circles under his eyes, and they say it constantly, like, he's our picky little eater, but he's always...
Because he doesn't want to eat any of the meat, because it's people. Did you read that, like, theory in, like, IMDb trivia or whatever, that, like, the parents are somehow, like, witches?
Oh.
So there are some weird little things in there, like, okay, well, like, they moved from Massachusetts, right? That's one thing. But then another thing was that his, like, fun fact to the kids in school on his first day was the thing about, like butchering and cooking a cat and then doing a certain thing to the bones, and it turns you invisible.
Yeah.
And that's like a spell.
I didn't even think about that. Are they Salem
and then
witches?
the dad at the end says, do you know what'll happen if you tell people about what we do? They'll burn us.
Yep.
Oh, interesting.
He said they're going to find us and they're going to burn us.
Now that you're saying this, I'm like, oh my God, they're witches. They are 1,000% witches. Yeah.
So, yeah, they're just little tiny little things. He said one more thing.
The threat of being burned.
He says one more thing to the girl that it's in the trivia about, like, why would he know this? You know? And it's like a weird spell thing. And then I guess Randy Quaid working with chemicals and stuff was kind of like an alchemy kind of like a nod to, like, alchemy or something like that. But yeah, the weird thing that he said at the end about if they find out, they'll burn us. And I was like, that's weird. Why would he say that?
Huh.
So yeah, I don't know that it's blatantly like this is a family of witches, but it's kind of in there. It's like a theory that people have come up with because of these little hints that are thrown in there.
No, I love this.
I want to give a shout out to Sandy Dennis
as
the
I was just about to talk
the guidance counselor.
As the guidance counselor. I mean,
phenomenal.
You got to hand it to Oscar winner Sandy Dennis. I mean, she shows up in this movie, and I think she's really good.
I actually think she's so good. Honestly, besides, I hate to even say this because he is young, but besides the little boy, I think everyone's performances are good. And the boy isn't bad.
I think the boy's fine.
No, he's fine. Again, I'm giving him credit, and he was young, but he just, it felt like he was kind of giving the same face the whole movie. Just that, like, look of, like you said, kind of just, like, lost, looking aloof, and just like, some of
his dialogue's a little hard to understand sometimes because it's very, like,
but he's
so like mumbly or whatever, but he's
so I'm like, I'm not gonna attack a child in this moment, but
of course
you know
will.
You know what's wild? This is the same year Randy Quaid made Christmas Vacation.
I know.
Shitter's full. I mean, there's nothing like a good weirdo in a blockbuster movie.
Yes.
And that weirdo in the 90s was usually Randy Quaid.
Like,
I mean,
when he shows
Independence Day.
Yes.
Come on.
Yeah. Honestly, in Christmas Vacation, when he shows up in, like, their trailer, like, every line he says from the moment he arrives is so good.
Yeah.
It's so solid.
Gold.
And again, I thought he was so amazing in this movie. Creeped me the hell out. But he's just walking around his cardigan sweater and his tortoise glasses. And he's trying to look like the all-American dad. But then he's just like, when his voice gets soft and he comes in on his son and is like, I need you to go to bed right now.
When he pulls up next to his son. When he pulls up next to his son in the middle of the night. When the kid's walking home.
Yeah. Oh my God.
How scary was that scene?
It's just too much.
Yeah,
like,
you're like, ooh.
And it's a true horror movie. So it's like, I know movies that made us weird, and it did make me weird because it's a weird movie, but it also was part of the reason I got into horror. And I've said this to Ashley before, she was allowed to watch all these movies. I was not. So I would have to go to sleepovers, and I remember, like, this movie specifically, and then the movie Komodo, about Komodo dragons that are, like, giant and eat people. No? Haven't heard of it? Of course you haven't.
Komodo?
Honestly, that could have been my movie that made me weird as well. And so even though I wasn't allowed to watch them, I always connect with Ashley in that, like, you would have been the friend that invited me over to watch these secretly at a sleepover because your parents were cool.
Forbidden movie.
Because I had friends who were like, turn it off, I hate this, like, don't tell me a scary story. And I was like, I'm kind of into this. And, like, parents absolutely did that for me.
Yeah.
One of my favorite memories of something like that at a birthday party I remember we watched the beginning of When a Stranger Calls.
So good.
And all of us were probably in like the 6th grade in this girl's basement.
Oh,
and
man.
That opening scared the living shit
Yes,
out of
that
all of us.
opening
And
scene.
I think that we had to turn off the movie. Which is fine because I feel like us as 11-year-olds could not have.
No, the rest.
We didn't have the attention span for like the other.
Then when like the
70
chase
minutes of that
scenes
movie.
and it's like you just needed that like hit at the beginning. Oh my gosh! But what a terror that is! I love it.
Yeah. But let me say this about parents, though. I mean, the 80s, as like we all know, is like peak horror slasher. You know, we've got Nightmare on Elm Street's coming out the wazoo. Making a
Friday the 13th movie almost every year.
All the great slashers came out.
And there were really great ones. There were really bad ones.
Sure, we love the bad ones too.
But like, we love the bad ones too. But horror movies were the slasher was king at this point. And, like a psychological, like spooky thriller like this was definitely not something that like I feel like kids or just people, they wanted that horror, they wanted that slasher.
You want someone with a knife or a chainsaw.
You wanted good-looking young people.
And you wanted young hot people. That is the other thing that I love about this movie is like, sorry to everyone in it, but nobody is like a super hottie. And it's they're looking like this basic 50s suburban family. But it's like, there's
Mumsy from Strangers with Candies in it.
Yeah. The 80s was also, much like nowadays, there's like a 80s boom in like movies and TV shows.
People are discovering it
in
now.
the 80s. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the 80s, it was all about the 50s.
All about the 50s.
So there's that 50s
Everyone was
nostalgia.
focusing on the 50s,
we got, we got Back to the Future. We got all, Happy Days. We got all that stuff. And then this might be one of the first 50s throwback movies that, like Scott said, examines it for not Happy
really
Days.
Looking at it. Like, let's not.
That there was some dark shit going on.
Let's look past this.
And that. Yeah, and people were not used to that. People were like, oh, the 50s, okay, we're all going to be in, like, Housewives.
Question, did you two grow up on Erie, Indiana?
I was too old for Erie, Indiana, so I did not watch it.
I think I think that Erie, Indiana only lasted, like, one season, but I remember they did an episode that's kind of always reminded me of Parents.
Okay.
And it's where this family moves in and they look like they're straight out from the 1950s, and you find out that the mom has been storing their family in Tupperware. That they're actually from the 50s and they have not aged a day since like 1957.
Okay.
Storing
and she
their
puts
family
them
in Tupperware.
to bed in Tupperware.
Yeah. And that
and
is
it always
so
reminded
good.
me of Parents. Yeah,
I love that because again, it's like it's this creepy look, and also Tupperware couldn't get more 50s than that.
I mean,
like, of course they're in Tupperware.
So you know what else? I mistook this movie for about 25 seconds for another movie by the name of Meet the Applegates.
Yeah.
In which a family moves in and they're dressed like a perfect 50s family, but they're actually insects.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have not seen it, but I know of it. Yeah. I feel like somebody told me about it. Actually, I feel like it was when I was talking to somebody about this movie. They're like, oh, the one where they're bugs? And I was like, what?
Yeah. That's what I thought. I was like, was that the one where the parents are like aliens or something? They're like,
it's that
bugs?
same vibe though,
like, no,
where we like, you would never question the perfect 50s housewife until they're a bug or they're a cannibal.
Pete, this movie also reminds me of the Tobe Hooper movie Invaders from Mars.
Yeah.
I think it's
the
think it's the guidance counselor character that reminds me of the Karen Black.
Oh, it's Karen Black and
Mhm.
Vegas from Mars. Yeah,
I just
absolutely.
love
I
a
love
guidance
that-
counselor character. They always end up
But I
being
love
happy.
that she's like, I love that she's like kind of like hippy dippy. She's
yes,
wearing like
bohemian,
caftans and
yeah.
like,
We're into it.
Yeah.
Like, taking us away from the typical 50s look. And it's like,
Yeah,
come
You
this
think
way.
she
that
was
she's
the
gonna?
one,
You
yeah.
think that she's gonna give him like an ink blot test?
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, she kind of did.
Like a
she gave him
Rorschach.
like, what is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That scene
Yeah.
of Sandy in the closet.
Yeah,
I
in the
think is-
pantry.
I think is really
The
scary.
was
pantry.
scary.
No, that's what I'm
Is it-
saying. This
and when she
movie's
grabs the knife?
terrifying. Yes.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Oh, poor Sandy.
It's got this 50s aesthetic, but it was almost like overtly like the wallpaper in the kitchen was like these weird squiggly lines, and like they had the like the kidney bean coffee table.
Totally.
And, like,
They went, like,
it was
over
just
the top.
super over the top, right? But again, to me, I'm feeling like I don't know, maybe in the hands of somebody like Tim Burton, like where would it have been a bigger hit if it was unfortunately not, Bob
Yeah.
Balaban, who was not a big
I know, which I'm like, we love Bob, but it was
Yeah.
a flop, and I do
Yeah.
wonder if a
It-
different director could have made it something more. I
Mhm.
think it could have been boosted a bit more. I like a
Mhm.
lot of the ideas. It had potential. It did
Yeah.
need a bit more.
And like I know there was a not a heavy use, but I know there was a specific use of black and white.
Yeah, I was
In
gonna
the
say.
movie.
I wonder if they
Yeah.
ever considered just doing
Doing
a
it in black and
complete
white,
black and
yeah.
white cut of this movie.
Ooh, that kind of, I feel like that would have
Yeah.
hit more.
I feel like it would have hit more too, but I also feel like the suits would have been like, nope, never.
You're right, you're right.
But I'm definitely glad we watched it. And again,
Good.
it's on Tubi, streaming for
I
free.
know.
Of
go
course,
check
it's
it.
on Tubi
on
because this
Tubi.
brand of bullshit is
Yeah.
just right up Tubi's
The
alley.
Yeah.
weirdest movies you've ever wanted to find will be on
They're
Tubi.
all on
but
Tubi.
also,
So-
I went for it and I rented it on Amazon because I
There
was
you
like,
go.
I'm going to
Okay.
get through it. I paid the money, $4 on
There it
Amazon
is.
if you wanted it. Scott and Pete, thank you for coming on. This was so much fun.
Thank you so
Oh,
much.
you're
This was
so
a lot of fun.
welcome. Yes, we love it. We love talking weird movies.
Mhm.
Before we officially head out today, before we do our close, is there anything you guys want to plug about your show? Like, give us a little spiel on your podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we're movies that made us gay. We kind of cover cult favorites in the LGBT community. I mean, we talk about
I was gonna say,
very
cover it all.
wide range of movies and genres. That's what's
Yeah.
kind of fun
Yeah.
about our show.
Yeah, they're not specifically gay themed movies, but they're movies that the queer community has kind of taken on as their own.
Yeah.
Right.
And
That we
movies
can identify
that
with.
we watched
Mhm.
a ton of times as a kid. We know all the dialogue. We probably shouldn't have been watching them, but we were, much like the movies here. But really had an impact on the queerdos that we turned into
Weirdos. I love
as
it.
grown-ups. Yeah. And we're streaming everywhere you can find your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that good stuff. If you want to follow us online, we're at Movies That Made Us Gay on Instagram and on Facebook, and we are on Twitter at
MTMUG Pod.
MTMUG Pod.
Love it.
Yeah, so go out and find us. We also have a Patreon with additional features and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, check us out.
Yeah, go
Mhm.
check them out. Thank you so much to all of our listeners for listening to this podcast and being a part of our weirdo community. We love you oh so much. If you are not already, consider donating to our Patreon page. It is a great place for the weirdo community to connect and to give us a show. There are $1, $5, and $10 tiers, but honestly, just give whatever you can give. We appreciate it more than you could ever know. It helps us produce what we want to produce, and we want to keep the production value high for you weirdos, so we love it. Thank you so much for those of you who give to us already. And in return for your generosity, we send our patrons 2 bonus episodes a month and a newsletter every month, along with any and all inside scoops and discounts on our merch. And the merch you can find at keepitweird.com. keepitweirdpodcast.com/merch. Get yourself a tote bag. Mine is now brown. It used to be white because I have worn it that often. It is so cute. It has our little cartoon faces on it. You can get a sweatshirt. You can get a shirt. You can get anything you want. Also, just check us out at keepitweirdpodcast.com to find out everything about our show. And if you have a fun little ghosty story for us for any of our Listener Ghost Stories episodes, send us something at keepitweirdpodcast@gmail.com and check us out on all social media at keepitweirdcast. We love to respond to you guys on Instagram, and we also have our very fun Facebook page now at this point where we all just tell stories and send memes, and it's the best. And to wrap it all up, what is our sign-off this week? Scott.
Ooh. Let's see. Our sign off this week is
Togar, no! just like
Togar.
No, yelling Togar. No.
Togar.
But also fuck those poachers. So they got what was coming to them.
Fuck them on. They got what they deserved.
Togar.
I was seeing if there was a way to like combine all of it. I was like, Togar.
I mean, you just need to cut in. You just need to cut in lion roars.
Yeah, just a roar.
I know.
Yeah.
And keep it
weird.
Keep it weird.
Bye.
Bye.
Togar. No. The end.